the title of our presentation today is Mediation, Survival, and the Florida Rules. And what I've passed out to everyone, seeing that we don't have a PowerPoint set up here in the courtroom, is what in my estimation is one of the best MEAC opinions. Not only for what it covers, but just as illuminating, it's for the way it's written. This harkens back, if you remember from law school, for those of you who are attorneys in the room, if you remember in the 1800s, the Regina versus Dudley and Stevens naval case in England on the Queen's Bench, I believe, and it dealt with cannibalism. And that case is both famous and infamous. Infamous because of the circumstances of the case and surrounding the facts. Famous for the way that Lord Coleridge, the presiding judge, wrote the opinion. It's truly timeless. And when I was reading through this MEAC opinion, I could almost hear a little bit of Coleridge. The mediator must proceed carefully when using any impasse avoidance technique in order to avoid the appearance that the mediator is simply accommodating the party who has threatened to abandon the process. Timing is critical in other respects. Used too soon, the parties will have little opportunity to tell their respective stories and put forward their own proposals. If too late, one or both parties may already have decided to end the mediation, rendering the party or parties unwilling to participate meaningfully in the process. At that point, the mediator must carefully inquire regarding their continued willingness to decide substantive matters necessary to reach a voluntary agreement. Wonderful, pithy language. I think it's a nice way of talking about not only impasse, but techniques to try to avoid impasse, which is why we're here today. Just like last week with our framing exercise. Mediation is, by definition, a process whereby a neutral and impartial third person acts to encourage and facilitate the resolution of a dispute without prescribing what it should be. Right out of Rule 10.210 of the Florida Rules for Certified and Court-Appointed Mediators. By its own terms, this definition casts the mediator in a proactive role, not simply encouraging, but acting in a manner potentially facilitating agreement between the parties. More explicitly, boy, here's that beautiful golden nugget. The mediator's role is to reduce obstacles to communication, assist in the identification of issues and exploration of alternatives, and otherwise facilitate voluntary agreements. And again, that is quoting part and parcel Rule 10.220 of the Florida Rules for Certified and Court-Appointed Mediators. I want to ask you, though, how do you do that? What's a method through which that can be done?
Making them think they're doing it.
Make them think they're doing it. Empowering the parties. Perhaps being cool, calm, and collected in your delivery as well. That's really easy to listen to as opposed to someone being, heavy-handed, right? And I think equally as illuminating can then be Rule 10.350. And we've talked about it before. Demeanor. A mediator shall be patient, dignified, and courteous during the mediation process. Why in the world is that in the rules? I mean, they're actually stipulating the demeanor of the individual. I thought we wanted to have as many different kinds of approaches as possible. Everyone's bringing their own thing. Larry?
Well, it's all part of the decorum of the court. The whole process has a decorum, and this is an aspect of that decorum.
Okay. So then, I think it's a perfect lead into that question at the bottom. Is the avenue through which to realize Rule 10.220, removing obstacles, facilitating communication, is it actually through Rule 10.350? And I'll submit to you that not just what you say, but the way in which you say it really invites the parties to resolve. Again, it's a voluntary process. It's totally up to them whether they want to play ball or not. I think it's delivery. I really do. I think it's presentation. I think it works. Have I seen it? Have I seen the sui generis approach where somebody isn't really abiding by Rule 10.350? I mean, patient? Are we always patient? Dignified?
No.
Courteous? What do you think?
It's not a matter of you're either dignified or not. You're either patient or you're not. There were slices, little
Okay.
shades and slices, and they run a gamut. And as long as you maintain with your conduct within that range, so you don't go over one side or the other, it's pretty much fair game.
Okay.
You're holding dice in your hand. You have to know when to throw it, and you've got to throw it at the right moment, or you're going to miss an opportunity.
Spoken like someone who's argued in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, right? Okay. George, no, thank you. I think it's wonderful to think, too, that you do have different approaches. There's different ways of using things. But if we really had to distill it down, maybe we can look at a corollary. Another touchstone for what we ought to do, perhaps, as mediators, as conflict resolution practitioners. This is, again, a corollary to some of our best practices, if you will. It says, fatigue and exhaustion resulting from hardships often lead to mental disturbances, such as nervousness or anxiety. Cheerfulness is a tonic and will spread to others. I know it's early in the morning. It's hard to be cheerful, perhaps, right? But I love that. Cheerfulness is a tonic and will spread to others. So maybe it's about positive, proactive engagement, positively framing things. George, you talked about that volley of approaches, right? And you're kind of waiting, and you're waiting to roll the dice. Well, think about it from the party's perspective. Man, the parties, are they the dealer? Are they the casino? There may be a little bit of both, right? They're rolling the dice the whole time, potentially. How do you deal with that kind of gauntlet of different approaches, different inquiries? Parties are not always happy to be there, as we said. Sometimes it's their first lawsuit. Imagine how anxious you are, from day one until the mediation, and maybe then some. And I think part of our job is to assuage that apprehension. And I want to provide a couple of statements that I've heard in actual mediations to illustrate this idea of positively reframing and reshaping. I mean, cheerfulness is a tonic, right? Can be infectious to others. I have been so frustrated with this lawsuit, I don't want to deal with it anymore. How do you deal with that? Somebody saying that. How can you do that quick pivot? We talk about in the office. Sometimes it's all about the quick pivot. Not sitting there, really ruminating over it or perseverating, dare I say, but a quick pivot.
This is your lucky day.
This is your lucky day. Larry, I like that. So how about, I feel like, and the survey says, how about something like that? Yeah. Hey, we're here today so you don't have to, right? We're going to potentially finish it up today. You don't have to worry about coming back in. You don't have to worry about that ongoing frustration. This, and then we know it's mediation, it's going to be a taxing process. I've heard parties say that, literally. How do you deal with that one? What do you think?
Let's take it 1 minute at a time.
Let's take it 1 minute at a time. Again, piecemeal. Journey of 1,000 miles begins with that single step, right? Shoot for progress, not necessarily perfection. Gene, I love that. The survey says, we're simply here to help you get options out on the proverbial table. It's up to you what you do with those. Boy, I love that. I gotta be honest, I use that a lot in mediations. Not necessarily here to resolve, sir, or ma'am, or to the individual. Just here to get some options out on the table. It's up to you what you want to do with them. And by the way, that door is unlocked over there. It's a voluntary process. You've heard my opening statement. Beyond that, you're free to go. You may want to stick around. Also, remember, as a mediator, I'm free to go ultimately as well when the time's right? You don't prolong or protract a disputatious conflict.
I think if you can also shift them from thinking of it as a taxing process to thinking of it as an opportunity, you can, make a shift.
Yeah. Opportunity. What is the Latin? Pugna est occasio, right? A dilemma or polemics or a dispute is an opportunity, right? Okay. Oh, here's one I hear a lot. You're probably going to hear this today. John, if you don't mind. Everyone's heard my voice. Let's hear John. Great voices in this room, right? John, if you don't mind.
If I resolve this today, then it looks like I did something wrong.
If I resolve this today, it looks like I did something wrong. You want me to pay that individual? Looks like I did something wrong. How do you handle that one?
Get him as a subpoena and take him to court.
Say, the alternative to alternative dispute resolution is litigation, right? Think about that one. I like this. The survey says, we're not here to assign blame. This resolution can be anything you all want it to be. There's no blame being pushed around. In fact, I think depending on the case, that's a nice little golden nugget for talking about, hey,
It's your problem.
bingo. Not only is it your problem, but we leave here today, no problem. You know, any resolution is self-determined by the parties, and it's within the voluntary auspices of the process. But reminding the parties, you're welcome to go. Litigation potentially is going to continue. Last time I checked, a judge and a judgment, people tend to think of that as assigning blame. Boy, what a nice opportunity in a mediation setting. Hey, let's just come up with more of a contract, more of an agreement. I want to pivot a little bit, and this one's not a question, this is rather a statement, and I think this is really illuminating. And this is from Viktor Frankl. Again, I appreciate you all rolling with this. We don't have the PowerPoint in here, but between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Not only is that for the parties to keep in mind, but I think it's incumbent on us as dispute resolution practitioners. There is that space. Folks, I would submit to you that we exist in that space. And in that space is opportunity.
That sounds like there's a twilight zone.
There might be a twilight zone, a good twilight zone.
Where resolution can be found.
Yes, where resolution can be found. Let me give you one quick illustration, and then we're opening it up to questions, discussion, and all the above. A letter D, right? I think that's what the average individual would see, right? If you just look at that really quickly, okay? Are you sure it's a D? Well, isn't it just the way I orient this? Maybe is it a quick illustration of a Civil War era cannon? Could be.
It's not gonna roll, right?
It's not rolling real well, but yeah. Okay, well, let's flip the script on this, quite literally and metaphorically speaking. Oh, is it a snail? Could be. Guess it depends on the framing, right? That opportunity, that space. Gene, if you can hold it just like that, you are fantastic.
No problem.
Okay.
You gonna jump in the middle of that circle?
Look at that. This is quick improv. I appreciate this. All right. Cheerfulness is a tonic, and it will spread to others.
Sure.
And again, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Oh, yeah.
Again, is it committee notes for Florida rules for certified and court-appointed mediators? Is that something dealing with the Uniform Mediation Act? No. Whole different kind of survival guide. Whole different kind of process. It was issued by the Department of the Air Force. It's the Search and Rescue Survival Manual, 15th of August, 1969. So maybe not a snail, maybe not, well, certainly not that rough illustration of a Civil War era cannon. Yes, it could be D, but I think, Your Honor, I had to step up to the podium. Appreciate that. I think that we see it as the shorthand for our charge as dispute resolution practitioners, as mediators. What are we here to help try to create? And it's up to you how you frame that. All right? And boy, we could further this analogy all morning. Imagine we don't have peace written there. What are you actually doing in the mediation process? You're being active, you're engaged, you're courteous, you're patient, per the rules. But I think as a mediator, what am I doing most of the time? I'm doing this. Probably starts out, imagine we don't have the peace, right? Starts out like that. What am I doing? Again, it's just an analogy. I'm hearing the parties. Okay, Gene, I hear you. I understand why you're here today. Coleman, I understand your response. Sometimes does the mediation process feel a little slow? Oh yeah, right? Sometimes as I'm toggling this frame around, trying to figure out the best way to orient it for the parties, silence is going to be my best friend. Boy, and that idea, isn't it that psychology notion of somebody says something, you just let them talk. I heard a very seasoned mediator, wonderful fellow, he's no longer with us. He passed a couple of years ago. But whether he's attributing this quotation to someone else, I'm not sure, but I heard it from him. He said his MO in mediation is when a party says no, it's their turn to speak. You have your own approaches, and there are different efficacious ways of getting to the resolution. I have heard mediators implore the non-caucusing party, instead of merely, hey, Mr. Catone, I'll be right back with you, right? And you know you never want to say, I'll see you in 5 minutes. No, right? Mr. Catone, as soon as I talk to Mr. Glover, I'm going to be sure to circle back with you. I've heard mediators say, Mr. Catone, while we're waiting, though, if you don't mind taking this opportunity, you had said A, B, and C. Can you kind of think of E, G, and F? The rules are so very important, not just to uphold the process, but really to uphold the integrity of public perception.
Yeah.
Well, you can put Victor back up there.
Oh, Victor goes back. You guys, all right, I'm earning my keep here. Victor goes back up.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in that.
Yes.
Because that space is, what he's trying to bring our attention to is the awareness of that space. To become conscious that that space exists.
Patience takes on perhaps a different face. You're going to be patient to a certain extent, right? But beyond that, you can't just sit there. It boils into negligence, in a sense, right? And I love that notion. Everyone says, well, you got to wait, you got to let people speak. Well, again, doesn't that, think of a mediation setting. You owe two different parties an allegiance, right? Unless you're in a caucus. Am I allowed to just, and I've sat and I've watched people do this in mediation trainings and in actual mediations. Is it a good thing just to let one party take off for 40 minutes and go on a long soliloquy? But could I say, boy, you did a really good job allowing that party to express themselves. And you did a really good job losing the other party. You wonder why the other party basically said, I'm done here? Well, I just was letting the first one speak. I was just being patient. The rules say that. Yeah, but isn't that more of an Aristotelian conception of patience? Not just sit back and just let somebody talk.
Yeah.
To me, that's not doing your job. You got to be proactive.
I was just going to say, that's the facilitator part.
Yeah.
And as long as you are conscious that you are a facilitator and that's one of your main roles,
Yep.
all that should just click right in place.
It's everything.